Hi, and welcome to the King of Kalimpong Devlog. Kalimpong is a multiplayer vehicle combat game. You control an acrobatic minivan with a roof-mounted projectile weapon and work with your teammates to beat the other team. I built the first prototype in Unity in 2014, and then switched to Unreal Engine before getting busy with life and work for a few years. But now I've got some time and a small team, so we should be able to finish the game. I want to talk about three things that I've been working on lately: speed tuning, level design, and some tricky camera bugs. When I first started tuning the speed of the vehicle, I made the mistake of doing it in a vacuum. I made a level of some arbitrary size, and then tuned the vehicle's speed until it felt good to drive around that world. Later on, through regular combat playtesting, I realized how bad this approach had been. It occurred to me that there are two sensations of speed that I have to pay attention to. The first is how fast your vehicle is moving relative to the stationary objects in the world around it. And the second is how fast your vehicle is moving relative to other vehicles. This became apparent in playtesting because as soon as you saw an enemy vehicle, you were almost immediately on top of one another and then past one another. You had time to maybe get a shot off, but definitely not enough time to dodge, spin, flip, kick, or do any of the other combat maneuvers. There was limited opportunity to demonstrate skillfulness. To address this, I introduced a global speed multiplier that I changed during network games to find a vehicle speed where traversal is fast enough and combat is slow enough. It was counterintuitive to me, but slowing things down actually made combat more exciting. You can actually see what your opponent is doing or anticipate some of their moves, and beyond just reacting, you can actually respond. This did expose another problem, though, which was that the scale of the maps I had been making was too large. They suddenly felt huge and really slow. Early Kalimpong maps have a lot of verticality, because Kalimpong the place is hilly, and instinctively it seemed fun to drive up and down hills and boost off of big cliffs. And that stuff is fun, but it gets old and it's not really what the game is about. Lots of vertical features means you don't get very many long, unbroken sight lines, so you can't see other players from afar and make strategic decisions about how to engage with them. You end up just flying around looking for chance encounters and often driving past enemy players who have only just become visible. So one rule of Kalimpong level design that has revealed itself is that the center of the map should be open and flat, with limited or short obstacles. This allows you to see where the objective is and what the other team is doing. It's fun to pick a line and engage the enemy deliberately, or run away. It's less fun to turn a blind corner and just get into a car accident. I've been blocking a lot of map ideas lately, both to find the right scale and to discover features that work. Some of them are actually promising. Many of them are terrible. My process for prototyping these maps usually starts with a drawing, which I then turn into a height map. I try to follow the 3 lanes principle, but then I further break the map down into zones where I want players to meet, which I'll delineate with obstacles or jumps. Lastly, I'll create a couple of jump circuits, because those are fun, and they add an additional layer of traversal on top of the map. I'm still surprised by what works and what doesn't, but that's happening less and less, which is a good sign. One feature I was experimenting with were these big quarter pipes for dropping into play. They're not really working because they extend the respawn time, but they don't give you much visibility or choice in terms of how you enter the play. These steep slopes did, however, expose some bugs in the camera's occluder avoidance system. There are really 2 issues here. The first issue is that the camera's pitch angle can exceed -90 or 90 degrees, causing it to spin. That can be fixed by clamping the pitch angle range, since exceeding those values isn't practical here. The second issue has to do with the system responsible for maintaining line of sight. The way this system works is that when the line of sight from the camera to the vehicle is expected to be broken, a new camera location is requested. To find this location, the system determines where the occluder is and identifies a series of possible new locations for the camera. It tests those locations, starting with the closest ones, and rotates to the first one with a clear line of sight. The problem was that the rotation math I was using to find these new possible locations for the camera was wrong, and would only work on very flat terrain. Adding pitch to Euler angles would give undesired results once the vehicle's pitch became more extreme. The solution was to switch to using quaternions and to incrementally rotate around the correct axis of rotation, which is a vector perpendicular to the test rotation's forward and up vectors. I still find the concept of quaternions a bit difficult to get my head around, but I do find using them, at least in certain situations, to be more intuitive than Euler angles. That's it for this week. Thanks for watching, and see you next week.